So, good afternoon, everybody. Is everybody like awake from all the sugar that we just got from the cookies and the donuts? I certainly am. I was just doing jumping jacks to stay warm. So I'm Phoummala Schmitt, and I'm also known as Exchange Goddess on the Twitters. So if any of you guys follow me, and if you don't, you're more than welcome to follow me. A little bit about my background. So there's some context to why we're going to talk about end-of-life options for Windows Server. So my background is server virtualization, sysadmin, data center. I started in IT. Actually, let's jump back in before then. I actually am from the fashion industry, and I decided to get into IT after I got divorced. So I went back to school, got a degree in it, and then got a sysadmin job. And my first day in the job was a consultant. Working for this small consulting firm, and I built 7 servers that day. It's like 6 or 7, and it was like a bunch of laptops, and I've never done it before. And they're like, hey, we need to deploy these. I'm like, oh, I think I can do this. It was like the first time I'm actually deploying this into production. And so I spent the whole day deploying all these different images, and it was a really, really great experience because then the next week I was taken out to a customer site that was having an Exchange problem. And mind you, this was the first time I really experienced Exchange. And my mentor, who took me out, said, have you ever worked on Exchange server? I'm like, not in production. He's like, well, it's going to be your day today. So from then on, it was Exchange, it was SharePoint, you name it, all the Microsoft products. And then I got into virtualization. I started dabbling into that, building VMs onto my local workstation. And I took this job at a global organization, and they hired me to be their Exchange administrator. But they also knew I had some experience with virtualization. So 30 days into the job, I get pulled into the office by my manager, and he's like, so we're putting on hold our Exchange upgrade. Instead, we need to get virtualized. And since you have some experience with virtualization, we want you to be our VMware architect, admin. And like I told you previously, I just dabbled into it, really wasn't an architect. Well, really didn't have much choice, so I figured, okay, I can do this. I went to training, read lots of stuff online, and figured I can do it, and I did. So about a year later, I had deployed a global environment, a vSphere 5, stretched between Pennsylvania and Leatherhead here in the UK. So I did come here quite often. I built 16 blades in the US and 16 blades over here. So the whole infrastructure down to naming standards, policies, what we're going to do, the whole workflow was all based off my architecture design. And then the team still actually utilizes that framework till this day. After doing that for a couple years, I figured, okay, I want to get back into Exchange again, so I took another job working for a healthcare organization, health insurance, actually. And that's where I was at for about 4 years before I joined Microsoft 3.5, 4 months ago, working as a cloud advocate. And a couple of my colleagues are here. We got Stephen and Marcelo there. So you're probably asking, what does a cloud advocate do? I like to term it as if you work with a server, whether it's on premises or in the cloud, we're here to enable you, help you get to the cloud, or if you have problems, we're pretty much, I'm going to help you get your job done, regardless of which environment you're in. And that's actually one of my passions as well. I like to help people. Part of that is by blogging. I like to write technical articles. I'm basically a people helper. I also do podcasting on the side when I have time. I used to do it a lot, but lately I've been a little busy. I also have 3 kids, and that takes up a lot of my time. Don't get to sleep very much, but all that really helps me make an impact to others, and that's my overall message to everybody I meet, is if I can make an impact to your life, whether it's personal or professional, it makes me feel good, because ultimately you're going to pay that forward to somebody else, and we can ultimately make it a better world. So I guess we can start talking about why we're really here, which is the end of life of Windows Server. Before we get into the actual versions, I want to talk about the actual product life cycle Does everybody know how Microsoft does the product life cycle? Yes. So you get your full 10 years from the day the product is released. 10 years later is the actual full support range. So after 10 years, there is no more security updates. But see, there's kind of this a soft date. So from the date it's released to 5 years later, it's what's called mainstream support. And mainstream support is security updates, features, and non-security updates. It's all that good stuff that everybody thinks about when you think about Windows support or Microsoft support. And after that 5-year mark, you go into what's known as extended life. And that is critical security updates and non-security updates, but there's no features. And see, that 5-year mark, I like to term that as it's your kind of your soft date. It should be your flag that says, okay, I've got another 5 years coming up. Because in 5 years, it'll be my 10-year mark. That means I get no security updates. And that's sort of a bad thing, right, when you're not getting security updates, especially in this day and age with everything being so focused on security. So let's say, you know, who here is still running Server 2000, 2003? Figure at least have one person. And are you getting security updates? Probably not. Yeah. So anybody that's still running Server 2000 and 2003, you can still run it, but you basically put yourself at risk because there's no new features. 2, there's no security updates. You're pretty much on your own. You can run it, but often recommend take off the network because there's so much bad stuff out there, vulnerabilities. I mean, last year we had well, there's always cryptoware and ransomware, all that fun stuff. So I'm standing in front of a bunch of IT professionals. I don't think I really have to tell you guys that malware and being compromised is a business disruption. I think it's kind of pretty obvious. I mean, how many of you have gotten your laptop or your servers infected with a virus? I mean, doesn't it take forever to clean up? Or if your parents or your relatives call and say, my computer's running really slow, and it's getting all these pop-ups, and you go take a look, and it's infected with something. Most of the time, it's going to take you all day to clean it, or you just completely re-image it and to be done with it. We all know it's disruptive, and for businesses, it's really disruptive. Just think, and this actually happened to me a few years ago when I was working in this global data center. We got cryptoware, and it started actually in the Middle East, and within a couple hours, it had spread to Oklahoma, and then it went to North Carolina, and it basically hit our corporate office. And at that point, it was spreading out through all our servers and our file servers, and I had to make the important call of cut the hard line, because once it hits file server, it's going to go to the SAN, and then you're just done. So we cut everything off and basically had to do restores, and in about 3 days is when it took us finally to get back up to where we were. That is disruptive. And that's just one example of what happens with malware. And if we weren't protected in the majority of our systems, it wouldn't have happened. And it actually came through someone's desktop in the Middle East. It was a desktop. They had clicked on something, and then they had an open file share that was also connected to the file share to somebody in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it just, that's how things propagate. On our fancy slide of saying security updates are important, not just protecting your servers and your machines, but also from a compliance standpoint. So in the US and also in Europe, we've got some highly regulated industries. And the majority of them require you to safeguard your data. So if you're not getting security updates, you're really not safeguarding your data. So you are at risk of losing compliance from all sorts of the regulatory organizations, and of course, GDPR. Okay, so now we're going to get into the meat of stuff. What's coming to end of life? We got Server 2008 and Server 2008 R2. Who's still running that? Does anybody? Yeah, so that's coming July 9th, 2019. After that, there's no more updates for you. You're done. Yeah. And then Windows Server 2008 and 2008 R2, that's January 14, 2020. So basically, you've got less than 14 months to upgrade or migrate. You've got to do something before that deadline. You can still continue to run it, but you're not going to be protected. Something I don't have in this slide is who's running Exchange Server on premises? Anybody? What version?
We're only running it for testing purposes because some customers use it. So we've had 2007, 2010, 2013. But really, it's just there to mess around and to show how
Good.
How it works.
Yeah.
For actual production usage, no, we use Office 365.
It's awesome. So if you're still running Exchange on premises, Exchange 2010 is also included in this end of life that's coming up. So January 14th, Exchange 2010 is going to be end of life. So if you're still running that, really highly consider moving off. Email's a pretty important application. So what's still supported? I have to bring this one up. So Server 2012 and 2012 R2 is actually an extended life now. Did you guys know that? That actually just came about in October. So now you've got another 5 years. You got two things to think about. So if you're running 2008, you got to think about getting off in less than 14 months. But now you've got to think about, Server 2012. We just threw that on you, didn't we? So you've got two OSs. Who's running 2012? Yeah. So you've got 5 years. You may think that's a lot of time, but that's going to come pretty quickly. 5 years goes faster than you realize. Since we are now in the extended period, this is your flag to think, okay, I've got 5 years. There should be a plan, some type of a roadmap that you have in the next 5 years. How are you going to get current before you reach the end of life there in 2023? Gosh, it feels weird even saying that, 2023. It's a perfect time to think about your options. Obviously, I work for Microsoft, so I'm going to talk about Azure. But you've got a couple options. You can upgrade your on-premises environment to get current, and the upgrade process, if you're running 2008, you can't do an in-place upgrade to Server 2016. And I'm not even going to mention Server 2012 for an upgrade. Why? Because it's end of life. Does that make sense? Like, if it's already end of life, you're going to have to upgrade at some point in the next 5 years. Just completely skip and go to 2016. Or you can migrate to Azure. Now, this is where things get a little tricky. So if you migrate to Azure, you can actually lift and shift with your existing OS. So Server 2008, also SQL 2008 as well. You can lift and shift into Azure, and we're going to give you an additional 3 more years of security updates. Yeah, I see some light bulbs spinning. Is that the best thing to do? It depends on your environment. It really depends on your business requirements, because we understand that there's certain environments that you can't upgrade right away, or it takes time, or that application owner, the company, probably isn't around anymore. It's not going to happen in 14 months. And we understand that. So we're giving you the option to lift and shift, but you can also refactor, rebuild that application into something that is already cloud native. But by doing a lift and shift, we're giving you 3 years. It's giving you time to kind of plan that deployment. You still have, so if you're on premises, you can do sort of the same thing by buying support for an additional 3 years, but that's not cheap. And for most small organizations, it's probably not going to be the most cost effective. This is a fancy marketing slide, but I wanted to show it to you just to see the compatibility. Azure and Windows just works It just works better. And I'm not saying anything about AWS or IBM, Oracle Cloud, Google. I mean, it all works. But when you look at it from the grand scheme of things, from an enterprise perspective, most organizations run Windows and have Active Directory, right? Do you have an AD? And you're within the Microsoft ecosystem, so that compatibility is just going to naturally work together a little better than some of the other Google or some of the other cloud providers, such as Google and AWS. I mean, it all works, but that seamless flow and having those built-in services and functions just works slightly better. Plus, with doing a lift and shift and adding your Windows Server into Azure, you actually can save a little bit on licensing. But you have to talk with your account managers on that one because I'm not a licensing person. I consider that dark magic sometimes. And then, so to get upgraded, the other path is upgrade to Windows Server 2006. It is the cloud-ready operating system. Why? Because it's got some bolt-in capabilities, especially with the Windows Admin Center, that's going to have the hybrid connectivity. So with Windows Admin Center, you can actually manage some features that are in Azure and on-premises environment. I like to call it sort of your gateway into the cloud. So you've got, you have the ability to see and manage both sides of the fence with that. And just some more why you want to go to the latest Windows Server. All the different features, obviously Windows Admin Center, you get storage migration, shielded VMs if you're going to be running Hyper-V. And you don't get any of that with Server 2008. And here's SQL. Sorry, I'm not a SQL person. I once played a SQL DBA on TV and it didn't go very well. Okay, so let's get started on what you actually have to do in order to upgrade. So I broke this talk into two. One is that you got to upgrade, but the second portion is here's how you upgrade certain components. First one is assess. One of the questions I always ask people is, oh, you're thinking about upgrading? Well, what are you going to upgrade? And a lot of times people come back with, I don't know. I don't know what my environment has. Does everybody know exactly what they're running in their environment? Yes, no? Some do, some don't. That's good. A lot of times I think the bigger the environment, oftentimes you don't always know, and then you run these scans. We have this AD query tool, which is an old tool, but it works great. You're basically querying Active Directory to find all the operating systems that run in your environment. I encourage you to try it, and you'd be surprised possibly to find out that you might still be running XP in your environment or Server 2000. And you know, it's good to know what you actually have. Yes? Oh, wow. I don't know if I want to congratulate you or cry for you. Wow, that's all I can say is wow. Is it still on the network? Like, did you unplug it?
It's on the network, but just use it as a client to access something. It's for a professor that's done the same thing for like 20 years.
Wow. I'm guessing it's a critical application.
No, they just like the editor that they have installed.
Oh. Okay, it's happy hour after this. I think we're good. Wow, you get a gold star. You definitely get a gold star for that. Okay, good stuff.
All our operating system stuff, the servers, that's all up to date.
Except for that one, right? You know, it only takes one. Okay, so after we assess what we have, we're going to migrate because the best way to upgrade to the latest version, and I'm going to kind of say this bluntly, regardless if you're server 2008 or 2012, is to really migrate off that machine. And what I mean by migrate is build another server and move your services and roles to it. For instance, Active Directory. Who here has done an in-place upgrade? on a domain controller? Anybody? How'd it go for you? Yeah, it usually isn't really good. And and that's almost every Microsoft application. You can do in-place upgrades, but sometimes it's better to move off to a different machine. You know it's clean and it doesn't have those gremlins, because we all have that one machine that just seems to be possessed. No matter what you do, it just doesn't always go right, or you have that one network equipment that just does quirky things. So, yeah, it's almost always a DC. There's always one DC that doesn't work right. It's not authenticating right. There's something funky with it. And that's why we do recommend you, when you are upgrading your domain, is to build a new server, migrate the FSMA roles to them, and then slowly decommission the other ones. Same thing for remote desktop services. Build a new environment and slowly migrate your roles off and then decommission those roles. Again, for the same reason, to get rid of the demons that may be in that environment. But that fresh, clean environment is going to give you a fresh, clean start, and you know that you're not getting anything behind. Who's running Hyper-V? Anybody running Hyper-V? Hyper-V, so if you're running Hyper-V 2008, there is no migration path. It's pretty much you got to export your VMs out of the host and import into something newer. 2016 or higher is the recommended. If you are on server 2012 Hyper-V, there is a live migration move that you can make. Now we get into the fun stuff. Application servers. This is where I like to say it really just depends. Again, I'm going to follow this, say the same guidance. It's good to migrate to a new machine. For instance, Microsoft Exchange only allows you to migrate off. You cannot do an in-place upgrade. SharePoint recommended to migrate. The one I don't have up here is SQL Server. Did you know you can do an in-place upgrade of SQL Server in a cluster with the OS upgrade? I've actually done one when I was part of a team that did that. It's a long weekend. But yeah, we did the OS upgrade in place of a SQL cluster, waited, and then the next day did the SQL in-place upgrade. It was a long weekend. I probably wouldn't recommend it very much to people. You've got to really plan this because it was a shared database with all sorts of applications using it. And we had like 20 departments that we were organizing this with. I'm like, oh my God, this is just absolutely crazy. But due to just budget and all sorts of factors, in place was pretty much the only thing to do because we were running out of time. But it can be done. So that's my little story on the SQL, but I'm always recommending migrate. Skype for Business is another one. So Skype for Business, which I used to manage, so you can do an in-place upgrade with Skype for Business as well. Not the OS though, just the application. So if you're going from Skype for Business, I want to say 2013 to the 2015 version, or yeah, the 2015 version, you can do an in-place upgrade. And it does work pretty good. I mean, very few issues, but most of the time, there's always going to be something that's missing in the environment that you forget, especially if you have voice integrated with it. It gets a little clunky, but for the most part, the Skype for Business in-place upgrade, I'm going to give it like 2 thumbs up. It's pretty good. And then the non-Microsoft applications. This is the one that it depends on what your software vendor is supporting. Certain ones do allow in-place upgrades. Others, no. I know SolarWinds, the monitoring software company, they definitely recommend you building new. And for the same reasons I am. You want a fresh, clean start. I'm trying to think some of the other applications or anything custom. If you have any custom applications, if at all possible, definitely migrate to something new. But if you're, the owner says, oh yeah, you can do it. If you plan it right, it could go okay. And here's another thing. So if you're running Office servers and you're, pretty small environment, I'd definitely consider going Office 365. And this is not because I'm throwing a Microsoft pitch, because this is a sysadmin. If you have like 100 people, 1,000, just from a management standpoint, the overhead, it is so much easier in Office 365. Why? Because they they've scaled out. Can you actually build an Exchange environment for 200 people that has high redundancy, yeah, like across the world? You just can't. A small mom and pop just can't do that. An enterprise, even a medium-sized enterprise, can't do that. I've run them. You just can't scale at that level. So if you're considering an upgrade, obviously Office 365 is definitely something to consider. Also from a SharePoint perspective too. I mean, just the high availability, and also the expertise is there. And then that leaves you, more room to do other projects. So, how do we do all this? We do provide step-by-step guidance. I like to say step-by-step guidance for modernizing your data center. Isn't that a nice terminology? Really, it's a migration guide and an upgrade center. So if you're not sure what to do, we actually have this little upgrade center you can go to, and depending on your operating system, you click on it and actually tell you, what your path is. And I'm going to show it to you here in a little bit. But there's also a migration guide that you can download, and it pretty much kind of talks about the same thing. So if you have questions, about certain applications or custom applications, it'll guide you through to make the right choices. So do a little demo. It's not going to be a flashy demo, but it's just a little quick view of what our upgrade center is. And should be up. I did pray for the demo gods, because you know how demos are. So this is the upgrade center, and you can get to it through aks.ms.upgradecenter. And if you see here, it's sort of this interactive little website. And depending on what your operating system is, we'll just highlight over. So let's say we're on server 2008 R2, and we're thinking about going to server 2016. Server 2019, I got to throw a little plug in there. That just got re-released on Tuesday. Awesome. But let's say, yes, I want to go to server 2008 R2 because I have this custom application. What do I need to do? Well, basically it walks you through. It tells you, no, it's a consecutive process. You can't do an in-place upgrade. But if you really wanted to, you could by upgrading to server 2012 and then going to server 2016. But that's 2 upgrades. Who really wants to do that, right? I mean, that's a pretty long weekend. As you can see, there's the steps there. It's even got my screenshots. Literally just, it walks you through the whole upgrade process. And we can go back. It even has a post-upgrade. Who does post-upgrade cleanup? Or do you save that for when we have more time? I'm getting giggles. The intent is to clean up right away, right? But I think we can all be honest with each other that sometimes we don't always get there. But this upgrade center kind of keeps you focused that, hey, I've got post-upgrade items I got to do. Because I'm going to be honest, as a sysadmin, I would forget about too, or I'd be like, okay, guys, this is a long weekend. Let's just call it, we did it, and let's come back next weekend. But we know how that goes. Sometimes that next weekend doesn't get there. But that post-upgrade is a little reminder to kind of do your cleanup. And same thing for server 2012, 2012 R2, 2016. Obviously, the upgrade to 2016 is to go to 2019. And that is the upgrade center. And we've got all sorts of resources for you if you have questions about all the end of support items for server, Windows Server, and SQL. Also, we've got our hybrid. Any questions? Because we got 5 minutes before the fire alarm starts buzzing. 7, yes. Questions, comments, concerns? Didn't like the room temperature?
Sorry, you probably will hear me anyway. 2008 non-R2. Upgrade path for that one. I've never bothered because I work in backup and disaster recovery, so normally I'd just throw the thing away, build a fresh one, and do a restore onto it. Is there an upgrade path for that into 2008 R2 so that you could then move forward?
Yeah, so you're in 2008, you would go to 2000 R2. For in place,
Yeah.
you mean?
Yeah, in place upgrade, yeah.
Yeah, you would have to go to R2.
Yeah, it can be done in place.
It can be.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
but
We've got some customers who are still on 2008. There's about 1,000 of them, believe it or
Yeah.
not. And yeah, I'd like to help them move forward if I could. So
we should talk afterwards, more in depth.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah,
yeah.
because that's, the R2 upgrade it's not too bad. It's
Yeah.
actually a really quick one. But then once you're on R2, then go to 2016.
Yeah, okay. Cool.
So, any other questions?
Thank
That's
you.
a good one, though. I'm
Cheers.
surprised there's still regular 2008.
I'll tell you later.
Yeah. I suspect it's going to be a good story, just like the 3.1. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
In that case, thank you very much to Phoummala Schmitt.
Thank you.